For 15 years, my stepmother had a favorite word for the things she took from me. She never called it cruelty. She never called it theft. She called it practical. My name is Nora Whitlock. I am 35 years old, and I want you to picture a ballroom. 220 people in black tie. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars. Circuit judges, state senators, the wealthiest attorneys on the Georgia coast, all of them holding their breath at once. Picture a woman in a champagne-colored gown standing at the front of that room, one heartbeat away from being crowned the most generous soul in the city. And picture me in a plain black dress, walking 17 tables from the very back with a single manila envelope in my hands. That envelope took almost 3 months, 1 forensic expert, 2 courageous strangers, and 1 sworn statement from my own father to assemble. But before I tell you what was inside it, and before I tell you how a woman who stole more than $2 million ended up walking out of her own coronation to the sound of her own heels on the marble, I am going to ask you for exactly one thing, and then I will never interrupt this story again. If you have ever been made small inside your own family, if you have ever been the one they edited out of the photograph, then stay with me all the way to the end, because the last thing I learned is the only thing that ever mattered. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to the version of me who still believed that being quiet was the same thing as being good. My mother died when I was 16. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed in the spring, gone before the leaves turned. 4 months. That was all the warning I was given before the person who loved me, most in the world, simply stopped being in it. One day she was reading to me at the kitchen table. The next, the house was full of casseroles and quiet voices, and a silence that never really lifted again. My father, Warren Whitlock, was a respected commercial real estate developer in Savannah, the kind of man whose name was on the side of buildings downtown. He grieved the only way he knew how, which was to work, until he could not feel anything at all. He left the house before I woke and came home after I slept, and for 2 years, the two of us moved through those rooms like polite ghosts who happened to share an address. And then he married Camille. Camille Rousseau came into our lives like warm weather after a long winter. In the beginning, she was attentive, gracious, almost radiant. She brought lemon cake to Sunday dinners. She called me sweetheart in a voice I genuinely believed was sincere. For a little while, I let myself hope that the house might feel like a home again. But about 6 months after the wedding, the lemon cake stopped, and so did the sweetness. It began with something small. Camille suggested, very gently, that I might be more comfortable moving out of my childhood bedroom, the one with the window seat my mother had built with her own hands, so that Delaney, Camille's daughter from her first marriage, could have a proper dressing room. I looked at my father, waiting for him to say something. He only squeezed my shoulder. "It is just a room," he said. It was never just a room. But I learned that day that my father had decided the easiest path through his own grief was to agree with whatever Camille wanted, and to stop noticing the cost. By the following Christmas, I was not in the family photograph. Camille arranged everyone in front of the fireplace, and somehow, by the time I walked in, there was simply no space left. "Oh," she said, straightening Delaney's collar without looking at me. "I thought you said you did not want to be in it." I had said no such thing, but I had already learned that arguing only handed her more ammunition, so I stepped back and watched my family arrange themselves without me, and I heard the shutter click. I paid for my own college. I earned a full academic scholarship to a state university and worked 2 part-time jobs on top of it, 1 shelving books at a library, 1 tutoring first-year students in statistics. Delaney went to a private college, 2 states away, her tuition paid in full by my father. Only once, I asked him why the difference. He looked genuinely confused, as though he had never considered it. Camille answered for him. "You always preferred your independence, Nora," she said. That was her genius. She never denied me anything outright. She simply narrated my life until the denial sounded like my own idea, and whenever I flinched, she would tilt her head and say the same 6 words she said every single time she carved me out of something. "I am not being unkind, I am being practical." For 15 years, I let her. Here is the strange gift of being invisible inside your own family. It buys you an extraordinary amount of privacy. Nobody watches a person they have already decided does not matter. After I graduated near the top of my class with a degree in finance, I took a junior position at a firm called Ardent Consulting Group, a boutique operation downtown that specialized in corporate turnarounds. Within 3 years, I was leading client engagements. Within 7, I was a senior consultant running restructuring projects for companies with revenues north of $200 million. By the time I left, my salary and my performance bonuses together came to roughly $360,000 a year. Camille never knew. She never asked. At the family dinners I was still occasionally invited to, the ones that grew fewer every year, she would wave her hand whenever my work came up. "Nora does something with spreadsheets," she would say. And then she would turn to her daughter and ask Delaney to tell everyone about her latest marketing campaign, because Delaney was the successful one. I let them all believe it. That was my choice, and it turned out to be the most valuable choice I ever made. Starting the year I turned 26, I quietly funneled every dollar I did not need into index funds and 2 modest rental properties, a duplex on the west side of town, and a small townhouse near the hospital district. I lived carefully. I drove a 7-year-old sedan. I wore clothes from ordinary stores to holiday dinners, while Camille showed off a new bracelet every year and mentioned, always in passing, exactly what it had cost. By the spring I turned 35, my net worth sat at approximately $5.6 million. Not one soul in my family had the faintest idea. The only person who knew everything was Elliot Danvers, my attorney since I was 30. Elliot was a sharp-eyed specialist in real estate law and financial fraud, and he was the one who first noticed that something was wrong. It happened almost by accident. He had been reviewing my father's property records for an unrelated question about an old inheritance, and one afternoon he called me, and his voice had changed. "There is a transfer deed here for your father's house in Ardsley Park," he said. "Warren's signature on it looks off to me. I am going to save a certified copy, just in case." I thanked him. I filed it in the back of my mind. I was not ready to fight anyone. Not yet. I did not understand then that the fight had already started, and that I was the only one who did not know I was already in it. By late winter, my body made the decision my mind had been postponing for years. I stopped sleeping, not the ordinary kind of tired. I would lie in the dark and stare at the ceiling fan for entire nights, while my brain cycled through client deliverables and risk models until my chest felt like someone was standing on it with both feet. My physician, a blunt and kind internist named Dr. Simone Adler, sat me down after my blood work came back and told me my stress hormones were at a level she described, very quietly, as dangerous. She told me to take at least 6 months away from work. She did not phrase it as a suggestion. I handed in my resignation at the end of February. My managing partner, a woman named Grace Holloway, shook my hand and told me the door would always be open when I was ready. And then I walked out of that building carrying a single cardboard box. And for the first time in a decade, I had absolutely no idea what to do with myself. That was when I remembered my mother. She used to talk about a little house by the ocean. Nothing grand, she always said. Just somewhere with a porch and the sound of the waves. She said she would buy it when she retired. She never retired. She never got the chance. I found the listing on a Thursday afternoon. Tybee Island, a 20-minute drive from the heart of Savannah, 6 bedrooms, whitewashed cedar shingles, a wraparound porch facing straight out at the Atlantic. Listed at $5.1 million, I called Elliot. I called my mortgage broker. I put down just over $1 million, and 18 days later, on a bright Saturday in the middle of March, I moved in. That first night, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine and listened to the waves break against the shore. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt as though I belonged somewhere. I did not tell a single person in my family. I wanted one thing in my life that was mine before Camille could find a way to make it about her. But Delaney saw a photograph. A mutual friend had tagged the location, and Delaney recognized me in the background of the picture, and she told her mother. And that night, my phone rang, 11:47 at night. Camille's number glowing on my screen. I had not answered a call from that woman in 3 months. But something about that first night in the house, the wine, the waves, the foolish little hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different now, made me pick up. "Delaney told me about your little beach house," Camille said. No hello, no congratulations, just that clipped or organizing tone she used when she was rearranging furniture or rearranging people's lives. "How nice for you. Listen, your father and I need a change of scenery. The city has become exhausting. We are moving in tomorrow. Your father says it is fine." I was silent for perhaps 5 seconds. She filled them. "We will take the master bedroom, obviously," she went on. "Delaney will have the room with the ocean view. You can take the small one at the back. It is tight, but you have always been comfortable with less." My free hand closed around the porch railing until the wood bit into my palm. "Did my father actually say that?" I asked. "Can I speak to him?" "He is asleep," she said. "Do not wake him. You know his heart. And honestly, Nora, If you do not like the arrangement, you can always find somewhere else. It is not as though you cannot afford a motel. My hands were trembling. My jaw was locked so tight it ached. But when my voice came out, it was steady. It was almost gentle. "Of course, Camille," I said. "I will have everything ready for your arrival." She hung up without saying goodbye. She never said goodbye. She thought she had just won something. What she had actually done was make the last mistake she would ever make under my father's name. I sat in the dark for 20 minutes, staring at an ocean I could no longer see. Then I called my father. It was midnight. He answered on the second ring, wide awake. "Sweetheart," he said, and his voice was confused. "I did not say any of that. Camille told me you had invited us down for the weekend, and there it was." The whole thing clicked into place. The same way it must have clicked for Elliot months earlier when he stared at a signature that did not match. If Camille could forge my father's words to my face over the telephone without a flicker of hesitation, then forging his name on a piece of paper would be nothing to her at all. It would be easy. It would be routine. I did not sleep that night, but for the first time in 15 years I was not sad. I was clear. At 7 the next morning, I called Elliot Danvers. "That certified copy of the Ardsley Park transfer deed," I said. "The one with the signature that looked off to you. I need to see it today." Elliot did not ask me why. He had known me long enough to hear the change in my voice. By 9:30, the documents were in my encrypted inbox. A scanned copy of a transfer deed, dated the previous April, conveying my father's family home in Ardsley Park, a house assessed at $1.4 million, to an entity called Rousseau Legacy Holdings. I had never heard of it. Neither, I was certain, had my father. I pulled up the state business registry. Rousseau Legacy Holdings had been registered 2.5 years earlier. Sole member, Camille Rousseau. No other officers. No other names. Just hers, waiting quietly in a database like a spider at the center of a web nobody else could see. Then I did what 12 years of consulting had trained me to do. I compared the signatures. I laid my father's signature from the transfer deed beside his signatures on his will, on his medical power of attorney, and on a birthday card he had mailed me 2 years earlier. The differences jumped out at once. The capital W in Warren was missing the long, confident downstroke he always used. The pressure of the pen was uneven, heavy at the start and feathering to nothing at the finish. The unmistakable mark of a hand that was drawing a shape rather than writing a name it had written 10,000 times. Elliot confirmed what I already knew. "This is not a careless signature," he said. "This is a deliberate imitation. But if we want it to hold up anywhere that matters, we need a certified expert to say so." He recommended Dr. Renata Voss, a forensic document examiner accredited by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners, a woman who had given expert testimony in more than 40 federal proceedings. If Renata Voss concluded that a signature was forged, Elliot told me no court on the Georgia coast would seriously argue with her. "There is something else," Elliot added, and I could hear him choosing his words. "I found 3 withdrawals from your father's retirement account. $410,000 moved in installments to an account at Tidewater Union Bank under the name C. Rousseau. We will need a subpoena to pull the full statements. But Nora, I want you to understand what we are looking at here. This is not family drama anymore. This is a felony." I stared out the window at the ocean my mother never got to see. "This is a felony." I let the words settle into me like cold water, and somewhere underneath the fear, something I had buried for 15 years, finally quietly stood up. They arrived at 10 the next morning. 2 black SUVs, packed to the ceiling with luggage and decorative pillows, and what appeared to be an entire set of monogrammed bath towels. Camille stepped out first, sunglasses pushed up into her platinum hair, surveying the property the way a buyer inspects a foreclosure. "Not bad," she said, "for a starter home." A starter home. 6 bedrooms. $5.1 million. She walked straight to the master bedroom as though she had already memorized the floor plan. And within the hour, my clothes were in a heap on the hallway floor, and her garment bags were hanging in my closet. Delaney claimed the room with the ocean view. I was directed to the smallest room on the ground floor, a space that had originally been designed as a linen closet in a house that belonged, entirely and legally, to me. My father trailed in behind them carrying a single duffel bag, looking like a man who had been loaded into the wrong car and driven somewhere he did not recognize. He caught my eye in the hallway and mouthed 2 silent words. "I am sorry." I gave a small shake of my head. "Not yet," I mouthed back. "Not yet." That evening, Camille invited 3 couples from her social circle to dinner, without asking me, using groceries I had bought. She walked them through every room, her hand sweeping across the open kitchen like the host of a game show. Warren always wanted a beach house, she told them, glowing, so I made it happen. Not one person at that table knew that I owned the house. Not one person thought to ask. I washed the dishes, I smiled, and at 9:45, my phone buzzed with an email from Elliot. Dr. Renata Voss had finished her preliminary review. Her finding was that the signature on the Ardsley Park deed was, in her professional judgment, highly likely to be a simulated forgery. I dried the last plate, set it on the shelf, and walked to my tiny room at the back of my own house. And at 11, when the house had finally gone quiet, a second email arrived from Elliot. The subject line was 4 words long. Call me tomorrow. Bigger. I waited until 6:45 the next morning, and then I slipped out the back door and walked down to the water, where the waves would cover my voice. The tide was low, the sand still dark and cold. I called Elliot from the waterline. The retirement withdrawals were only the beginning, he said. She opened a supplementary credit card in your father's name, using his social security number and his credit history, listing herself as an authorized user. The current balance is $52,000. A spa retreat, 2 designer handbags, a first-class ticket to New York. None of it authorized by your father, because your father does not even know the card exists. I closed my eyes. The ocean roared in front of me. And there is a third account, Elliot went on. A savings account titled the Rousseau Family Trust at the same bank. $240,000 transferred out of the household checking account your father shares with Camille. Every transfer labeled as ordinary household expenses. Groceries, utilities, maintenance, except none of it went to groceries. I did the arithmetic right there, standing with salt water soaking through my shoes. The house in Ardsley Park, $1.4 million. The retirement account, $410,000. The credit card, $52,000. The trust, $240,000. Somewhere north of $2 million, stripped from my father without his knowledge, while he recovered from a mild heart attack and trusted his wife to manage the household. That afternoon, Dr. Renata Voss filed her official report. Her conclusion left no room for interpretation. The signature on the transfer deed was a simulated forgery, rated at the highest level of probability her field recognizes. We are looking at forgery in the first degree and the financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, Elliot told me. Both are felonies under state law. So the question is yours to answer, Nora. What do you want to do? If I report it now, I said slowly, thinking it through the way I would think through a client's options. Then Camille gets arrested tonight, my father gets blindsided in the worst possible way, and the whole city knows the whole story by dinner, filtered through whatever version she tells first. And if there is another way, Elliot said, and then he paused. The Coastal Georgia Bar Association holds its annual charity gala in June, he said. Camille is being honored this year, Philanthropist of the Year. If even $1 of that stolen money flowed into her foundation, then the award itself is built on fraud. He let the thought hang in the air between us. You can end this in a police station, he said, or you can end it on the stage she built for herself. I knew my answer before he finished the sentence. Almost 3 months. That was the time I had between that cold morning on the beach and the night of the gala. I broke the plan into 3 phases, the way I would break down any impossible project. Phase 1. Compile every piece of evidence into a file that could survive the scrutiny of a judge, a journalist, and a room full of attorneys all at once. No gaps, no assumptions, only documents verified independently twice. Phase 2. Protect my father. Move oversight of his finances to an independent fiduciary who answered to no one in the family. Get his health stable and prepare him gently for the truth that was coming. Phase 3. Coordinate the reveal at the one event on Earth that Camille cared about more than anything, including the people who were supposed to love her. Elliot filed a subpoena request with the county court, and the estimate came back at 30 to 45 days. Dr. Voss began her full forensic comparison. The pieces were moving. But I needed one more person, someone whose credibility Camille could not wave away, and whose reach would outlast a single evening. I called Coralie Beaumont. Coralie was in her 50s, a senior editor at the Savannah Society Register, the magazine that chronicled every gala and fundraiser and garden party among the coastal elite. More importantly, she had been my mother's college roommate. They had stayed close until the very end. Coralie had been one of the last people to sit at my mother's bedside. When I told her what I had found, the line went silent for a long time. Then Coralie said, I have had doubts about that woman for years. She gives generously and in public, but she never once lets anyone see the books. Every time I pitched a story about auditing her foundation, my publisher killed it. Too many of her friends buy advertising. Coralie agreed to attend the gala as a credentialed member of the press. If the evidence held, she would publish a full investigative piece in the Register, a magazine read by tens of thousands of the most influential people on the coast. One condition, she said. Every document is independently verified before I write a single word. I would not have wanted it any other way. Living in that house with Camille through those weeks was like sharing a cage with someone who did not yet know the lock was already broken. April settled in, and so did she. She changed the lock on the master bedroom, my master bedroom, without asking. She hired a decorator to redo the living room in what she called coastal elegance: new pillows, a driftwood table, a linen sofa that cost more than my first car. The invoice arrived in my mailbox with a sticky note in her looping hand. Nora, take care of this. I paid it. I needed her comfortable. I needed her careless. A careless person leaves a trail. Every Friday, she hosted what she called sunset socials, 5 or 6 couples drinking my wine on my porch, while she narrated her life as though she had built every inch of it from nothing. Once, I overheard her tell a woman in an expensive wrap that I was going through a phase, that I had quit my little job and was living off my savings, and that she and my father had really only come down to the island to keep an eye on me. The woman looked at me with pity. I refilled her glass and smiled and said nothing, and I let Camille believe that my silence was surrender, because that belief was the most useful weapon I had. My father pulled me aside one evening in the kitchen. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" he asked. "Camille says you have been struggling, that you are not handling the change well." "I am fine, Dad," I said. "Better than fine." He studied my face for a long moment, and something behind his eyes flickered, some old instinct trying to wake up, but he did not push. My father had spent decades trusting the wrong person to tell him the truth about the people he loved, and the habit was not going to break in a single evening. And then, one afternoon while Camille was at a spa appointment, I picked up the tablet she had left on the kitchen counter. Her browser was still open. The most recent search sat there in plain black letters: how to add a name to a property deed in Georgia. She was not visiting. She was not settling in for a season by the sea. She was planning, step by careful step, to put her name on my house. I photographed the screen, noted the time and the device, and sent it straight to Elliot. That evening he called me back. "The subpoena has been approved," he said. "We will have the bank statements within 2 weeks." And then he paused in a way I was beginning to dread. "But Nora," he said, "there is another account we have not seen yet." The bank's statements arrived at Elliot's office on the first Monday of May, sealed in a courier envelope stamped confidential. He called me at noon, and I took the call sitting in my car in the island's public lot, the only place I could be certain Camille would not overhear. "Everything we expected is confirmed," he said. $410,000 from your father's retirement account, the credit card, $52,000, and the trust account, $240,000, all of it moved out of the joint household account and disguised as routine expenses. The grand total, taken from your father without his knowledge or consent, comes to roughly $2.1 million. He let the number sit between us. "Elliot," I said, "if I tell my father now, he will confront her. He will not be able to stop himself, and that could destroy the plan, or it could destroy his heart." "I know," Elliot said, "but he needs to hear it from you before that night, not on that night. He needs to walk into that ballroom already knowing the full truth. And he needs to sign a sworn affidavit stating, in his own words, that he never authorized any of it. Without your father, this is your word against hers. With him, it is arithmetic." We settled on the 1st of June, just under 2 weeks before the gala, early enough for my father to steady himself. Late enough that Camille would have no time to build a story of her own. That same week, Dr. Voss sent an addendum to her report. The hand that had forged the signature on the Ardsley Park deed, she wrote, was consistent with the hand that had filled out the fraudulent credit card application. The same person, the same pen habits, the same crime committed twice. The 1st of June was a Sunday. I woke before dawn and watched the sky turn from charcoal to pale gold through the little window of my tiny room. Camille never rose early on weekends. I had a narrow window and I did not intend to waste it. I found my father on the porch at 5:45, sitting with a cup of coffee he had made himself, watching the pelicans skim low over the breakers. "Walk with me," I said. We took the boardwalk down to the beach. The sand was cool under our bare feet. I waited until we were far enough from the house that even a shout would not carry. And then I opened the folder. I showed him the transfer deed. I showed him the forensic report. I showed him the bank statements, all 3 accounts. I showed him the registration for Rousseau Legacy Holdings, filed in his wife's own name, I laid it out the way I would lay out a presentation for a client. Facts first, consequences second, questions at the end. I did not editorialize. I did not need to. The documents did all the work. My father read every page. His hands began to tremble. A vein stood out at his temple and beat there for what felt like 3 full minutes. And neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ocean pulling at the shore. "I did not sign this," he said at last, his voice barely audible over the water. "I have never heard of this company. I did not authorize any of these transfers." He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes, and when he lowered them, they were red. "I am sorry, Nora," he said. "God forgive me. I am so sorry. I should have protected you, both of you." "You did not know, Dad," I said. She made very sure you did not know. My father agreed to everything, the affidavit, the gala, the silence, held tight until the 19th of June. Elliot notarized his sworn statement 2 days later, with a certified witness present. And as we walked back up the beach that morning, my father stopped at the foot of the boardwalk stairs, and he pulled me into his arms. It was the first time he had held me in 8 years. "Your mother," he whispered, so quietly I almost lost it in the wind, "would be so proud of you." I did not know it yet, but my mother's voice was going to reach me one more time before this was over, in a way I could never have predicted. Camille spent the next 13 days preparing for the night she believed would crown her legacy. She hired a personal stylist. She ordered a custom champagne-colored gown, fitted twice and hemmed to the millimeter. Every evening after dinner, she stood before the mirror in the master bedroom and rehearsed her acceptance speech, gesturing to an invisible audience with the practiced grace of a woman who had been performing generosity her entire life. One evening, she informed me that I was expected at the gala. "For appearances," she said. "You will sit at the back, obviously, but I need the family present. If photographs, better. Wear something simple." "This is not your night." "Of course, Camille," I said. "I would not dream of stealing your spotlight." And I meant every word, though not the way she heard them. Behind the scenes, every gear was turning. Elliot finalized the evidence file, my father's affidavit, Dr. Voss's forensic report, the complete bank statements, the registration for the shell company, and a printout of Camille's browser search, recovered with a documented timestamp and device identifier so that no one could claim it had been invented. He assembled a full set of certified copies for the ballroom, while the originals stayed sealed in his office and filed with the court, because I had learned a long time ago that you never carry the only copy of anything into a room full of people who would give a great deal to make it disappear. On the 10th of June, Elliot met privately with Judge Eleanor Pruitt, the president of the Coastal Georgia Bar Association, who was personally overseeing the gala. He presented the file. Judge Pruitt reviewed it in her chambers for the better part of an hour, asked 3 precise questions, and then set down her reading glasses. "This is extraordinarily serious," she said. "Under our association's bylaws, any substantiated allegation of financial misconduct involving a nominee must be addressed before an honor is conferred. I will make the necessary arrangements." This was the detail that mattered most. No ambush, no surprise. A sitting judge reviewed every page in advance, so that when the moment came, it could never be dismissed as a jealous woman's theatrics. It was due process, wearing an evening gown. Camille knew none of it. She was too busy choosing between diamond studs and chandelier earrings. And then, on the evening of the 18th of June, one day before the gala, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I did not recognize. "I know Camille is not who you think she is. Meet me at the Riverfront Park tomorrow at 3. The message was signed with 2 letters, MV. I stared at those 2 letters until the screen went dark. I almost did not go. The gala was only hours away, and the last thing I needed was a cryptic stranger and a distraction. But there was a certainty in that message, a flat, patient certainty that told me this person had been waiting a very long time to say those words to someone who would finally listen. The Riverfront Park at 3 the next afternoon was blazing hot, the kind of coastal Georgia heat that makes the air shimmer above the pavement. I sat on a bench near the fountain and watched a woman approach, tall, silver-haired, somewhere in her early 60s, wearing a crisp linen blazer despite the heat, walking like someone who had rehearsed being calm. "Nora Whitlock," she said, and extended her hand. "My name is Margaret Vaughn." Margaret sat beside me and told me a story I had never heard, a story Camille had buried so deep that no ordinary search would ever surface it. Before my father, before Savannah, before the foundation and the philanthropist persona, Camille had been married to a man named Preston Vaughn, a successful oral surgeon in Atlanta. Preston was Margaret's younger brother. They had married nearly 2 decades earlier, and within 4 years it was over. After Preston discovered that Camille had quietly moved $220,000 out of their joint accounts and into a personal account she had opened under a name he did not recognize. He did not press charges, Margaret said. He wanted a clean break. He wanted to forget. I respected that for 16 years. But then I saw your name in a piece Coralie Beaumont wrote about women in coastal consulting, and I recognized the man in the photograph beside you. Warren Whitlock. I knew exactly who he had married. She looked at me, steady and unflinching. Camille has a pattern, Nora. She finds men who are successful and trusting. She takes control of the money, and she bleeds them dry, and then she vanishes into the next life before anyone can catch up to the last one. Your father is not her first. He was never going to be her last. Margaret handed me a folder. Inside was a certified copy of the divorce decree, Vaughan versus Rousseau, with a single phrase highlighted in yellow. Dissipation of marital assets. 2 husbands. 2 sets of stolen funds. The same playbook, 16 years apart. I stayed quiet all those years because I was ashamed. I had not warned anyone. Margaret said, I am not going to stay quiet anymore. If I can help your father, I will. I thanked her, and I called Elliot before I had even reached my car. The night before the gala settled over the beach house like a held breath. Camille was in the master bedroom, rehearsing her speech one final time. Through the door, I could hear the rise and fall of her voice, grateful, humble, polished to a shine. In the next room, Delaney was laying out jewelry on the dresser, holding earrings up to her reflection, completely unaware that within a day, every piece of the life her mother had built would be scattered across a ballroom floor. My father knocked on my door at 10. His face was drawn, but his eyes were steady, the eyes of a man who had finally stopped looking away. In his hands, he held a small wooden box, walnut, with a tarnished brass clasp. I found this, he said quietly, in the locked drawer of Camille's nightstand. She was at the spa this afternoon. I was not looking for it, Nora. I was looking for my reading glasses. He opened the box. Inside were 2 handwritten pages, folded once, the paper gone soft and yellow at the edges. My mother's handwriting. I knew it instantly. The looping tail on the lowercase y. The way she crossed her letters with a slight upward slant, as though every word were reaching for something better. The letter was dated 3 days before she died. My brave girl, it began. You do not need anyone's permission to live your life. You are enough. You have always been enough. Do not ever let anyone make you doubt it. Camille had kept that letter hidden for 19 years. My mother's last words to me, sealed in a box, locked in a drawer, in the bedroom of the woman who had spent a decade and a half telling me, in 100 quiet, practical ways, that I was nothing. My father and I sat together on the edge of my narrow bed and cried without speaking. When I could breathe again, I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the small purse I would carry the next night. I will not let you down, Dad, I said. I will not let her down either, I thought, meaning my mother. Before I turned off the light, I passed across the hallway that led to the porch. Camille's silhouette was framed against the moonlit water, a phone pressed to her ear. I stopped. Her voice drifted through the screen door, low and certain. Do not worry, she was saying. After the gala, I will have them transfer the deed. She will not even notice until it is finished. She was talking about my house. The house I had bought with 12 years of invisible work. And she was planning to take it the moment her trophy was safely in her hands. I went to bed. I set my alarm for 6. And for the first time in almost 3 months, I slept all the way through the night. The morning of the gala arrived bright and still. By 8, I was in Elliot's office, a glass-walled suite on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse near the river. The manila envelope sat on his desk between us, like something loaded and laid carefully flat. We reviewed the contents one final time. The forged transfer deed, paired with Dr. Voss's forensic report. The bank statements for all 3 accounts. My father's notarized affidavit, signed and witnessed. The registration for Rousseau Legacies Holdings. The divorce decree from Vaughan versus Rousseau. And the time-stamped screenshot of Camille's search for how to add a name to a property deed. All of them certified copies. Every original sealed and safe. Margaret Vaughan confirmed this morning, Elliot said. She bought a ticket through Coralie. She will be at table 12. She is ready. At 10, Elliot met Judge Pruitt at the courthouse for a final briefing. The judge had already informed the Gala's organizing committee that the Philanthropist of the Year award would be paused before its presentation, pending a matter that required the association's attention. The committee agreed, reluctantly but unanimously. No one among the legal elite of the Georgia coast wanted their signature honor tainted by fraud that everyone had been warned about in advance. Camille, meanwhile, spent the morning in a state of radiant oblivion. She emerged from the master bedroom at 2 in her champagne gown, hair swept up, a diamond pendant catching the light at her throat. She looked me over in my simple black dress, and my mother's pearl earrings the way a queen surveys a chambermaid. "At least try to look like you belong there, Nora," she said. I met her eyes. "Do not worry, Camille," I said. "Tonight, everyone in that room will know exactly where I belong." A small crease appeared between her perfectly shaped brows, but she was already checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. She had far bigger things on her mind. Or so she believed. The grand ballroom of the Whitfield Grand Hotel was the kind of room designed to make ordinary people feel extraordinary and extraordinary people feel immortal. Chandeliers like frozen fireworks, floor-to-ceiling windows draped in ivory silk, round tables set with bone china and sterling, each anchored by a centerpiece of white peonies and flickering candles. 220 guests. Attorneys, circuit judges, state legislators, the founders of charities, real estate developers, and the society columnists who recorded their every handshake. In a room like that, reputation is not merely currency, it is the air itself. Camille moved through the crowd as though the entire evening had been choreographed around her. She kissed cheeks, she clasped hands. She leaned in close to whisper things that made powerful people laugh. At one point, I watched her rest her palm on Judge Pruitt's forearm and say, with the sincerity that only a lifetime of practice can produce, "I am so deeply humbled by this honor, Eleanor. Truly." She sat at table 1, directly before the stage, the seat of highest honor. My father sat beside her, his back rigid, his water glass untouched. He had not looked at his wife since they arrived. She had not noticed. I was at table 18, near the service entrance, exactly where Camille had assigned me. Elliot sat to my left, his briefcase tucked beneath his chair. At table 12, I could see Margaret Vaughn, silver-haired and calm, watching the room with the patience of a woman who had waited 16 years for this one evening. In the press section, Coralie Beaumont adjusted her recorder and opened a fresh page in her notebook. At 8:30, the master of ceremonies tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "before we move to this evening's awards, the association has a brief announcement." Camille straightened in her chair. She smoothed her gown. She smiled the camera-ready smile she had been rehearsing in mirrors for weeks. Then Judge Eleanor Pruitt rose from her seat, walked to the podium, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that we have received information which requires our attention before we can proceed." 220 pairs of eyes turned toward the stage. Camille's smile did not falter. Not yet, but I saw her fingers tighten around the napkin in her lap. Judge Pruitt's voice carried through the ballroom with the measured gravity of a woman who had spent 30 years on the bench. "Under the bylaws of this association," she said, "any substantiated allegation of financial misconduct involving a nominee must be addressed before an award of honor is conferred. This evening, we have received a formally documented complaint, supported by forensic evidence, by sworn testimony, and by independently verified financial records." She paused. The complaint was filed by a member of the nominee's own family. A murmur rippled through the tables, the quiet involuntary sound of 220 people recalibrating everything they thought they knew, all at the same instant. Camille was on her feet before the judge had finished. "This is absurd," she said, her voice pitched perfectly between outrage and wounded bewilderment. "Eleanor, who filed this? This is a charity dinner, not a courtroom." Judge Pruitt looked directly at me. "Miss Whitlock," she said, "you have been invited to present your evidence." The murmur became a wave. Heads turned, searching. Camille's eyes found me at table 18, at the very back of the room, exactly where she had put me. And for one long suspended second, across 17 tables and 220 witnesses, and 15 years of silence, we looked at each other. I stood. I picked up the manila envelope, and I walked. 17 tables, each step deliberate, each step audible on the polished floor. I could feel the weight of every gaze in the room. I could hear the rustle of gowns as women turned in their chairs, the clink of a glass set down too quickly, the scrape of a chair pushed back. "Warren," Camille's voice cracked across the silence like a struck match. "Do something. She is trying to destroy me." My father sat perfectly still. His hands were folded on the table. He did not look at his wife. I stepped onto the stage. 220 faces stared up at me, and the chandelier light was warm and merciless. I set the envelope on the podium, leaned toward the microphone, and took one long breath. "I did not come here tonight to destroy anyone," I said. "I came because the truth could not wait one more day." I opened the envelope and drew out the first document. "Last April," I said, "a transfer deed was filed with the county. conveying ownership of the Whitlock family home in Ardsley Park, a property assessed at $1.4 million, to a company called Rousseau Legacy Holdings. I held it up, and on the screen behind me appeared a high-resolution scan, the county seal, the legal description, and at the bottom, a signature reading Warren Whitlock. This signature, I said, is not my father's. The next slide appeared, a side-by-side comparison. On the left, the deed. On the right, my father's genuine signature, taken from his will, his medical power of attorney, and the affidavit he had signed 2 weeks earlier. The differences were visible from the very back of the room, the missing downstroke, the uneven pressure, the mechanical quality of a hand that was copying rather than writing. This analysis, I said, was performed by Dr. Renata Voss, a forensic document examiner accredited by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners, with expert testimony in more than 40 federal proceedings. Her conclusion is that the signature is a simulated forgery at the highest level of probability her field recognizes. The ballroom was silent. Not the polite silence of a formal event, the airless silence of a room that has collectively stopped breathing. My father rose from table 1. His voice was hoarse, but it carried. "I did not sign that document," he said. "I did not know that company existed, and I did not authorize the transfer of my home." Camille gripped the edge of the table. "Warren," she said, "tell them you signed it. Tell them." He looked at her for the first time all evening, and then he slowly shook his head. Somewhere at a table near the front, a man set down his fork, and the tiny clink of silver on china rang out across the room like a gavel. I drew out the second set of documents. "Between January and October of last year," I said, 4 withdrawals totaling $410,000 were made from my father's retirement account and deposited into a savings account under the name C. Rousseau. The next slide appeared, the bank statements, routing numbers redacted, dates, and amounts highlighted. Then I laid out the credit card. $52,000, I said, charged to a card opened using my father's social security number without his knowledge. Luxury travel, designer purchases, none of it in his records. And then the trust account. $240,000, I said, moved out of my parents' joint household account and disguised as ordinary expenses. I set the statements on the podium. The total taken from my father, without his knowledge or consent, is approximately $2.1 million, I said. Under state law, the financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and my father is 64 years old with a documented cardiac history, is a felony. Camille turned to the room, and the tears came instantly, glistening and perfectly timed. "She is lying," she said, her voice breaking with practiced fragility. "Warren gave me access to everything. This is a family misunderstanding, not a crime. How dare she turn a charity evening into a public trial?" Judge Pruitt spoke from her seat, her voice level as a plumb line. "Mrs. Rousseau," she said, "the evidence has been independently verified and reviewed by this association in advance. The award is revoked, effective immediately." Camille's mouth opened, no sound came out, and then, from table 12, a woman stood. Margaret Vaughn rose with the quiet composure of a person who had rehearsed this moment in her mind for 16 years. "My name is Margaret Vaughn," she said, and her voice carried across the ballroom with the clarity of someone who has finally decided to stop whispering. "Camille Rousseau was once married to my brother Preston Vaughn, an oral surgeon in Atlanta. Their marriage ended after he discovered that she had moved $220,000 from their joint accounts into an account under a name he did not recognize." She held up a bound document. "This is a certified copy of the divorce decree. The ruling specifically cites the dissipation of marital assets." She passed it toward the stage, and Judge Pruitt accepted it without a word. The murmur in the room broke like a wave against rocks. 220 people began to speak at once, first in whispers, then in full voices. I saw a woman at a nearby table cover her mouth with both hands. I saw 2 attorneys lean toward each other with the expression I recognized from every boardroom I had ever worked in, the look of professionals who have just realized they were standing next to something about to detonate. Camille stood frozen between the head table and the aisle, her champagne gown catching the chandelier light. Delaney sat beside the empty chair, tears streaming down her face, her hands clenched in her lap. She did not look at her mother. She looked at the tablecloth. My father stepped away from the head table and walked toward the stage. He climbed the 2 short steps and stood beside me at the podium. He did not take the microphone. He did not need to. Warren Whitlock, standing next to his daughter, facing the room, said everything that words could not. Camille looked at us. Then she looked at the 220 faces that, 10 minutes earlier, had admired her. Not one of them would meet her gaze. She picked up her clutch. She walked to the exit, and the sound of her heels striking the marble echoed through the ballroom long after the door had closed behind her. No one followed. For a few seconds after that door closed, the room simply held its breath. Then Judge Pruitt returned to the podium. "The Philanthropist of the Year award will not be conferred this evening," she said. "The association will begin a full audit of every donation received through the Russo Foundation. We ask for your patience and your discretion as this matter proceeds through the proper channels." She stepped back and the room exhaled. What happened next, I did not expect. A man at a front table, tall and silver-templed, rose and crossed the ballroom toward me. Harrison Cole, founding partner of one of the most respected litigation firms in the state. He shook my hand. "You presented that more clearly than half the attorneys I have hired in 20 years, he said. "If your father needs representation for the divorce or the criminal referral, here is my card." He pressed it into my palm. "No charge." Behind him in the press section, Coralie Beaumont caught my eye and nodded once. The kind of nod that means I have everything I need. I returned to the microphone one last time. The room quieted again. "I did not come here to tear a person down," I said. "I came because my father deserved to know the truth. Because silence is not loyalty, it is surrender. And because no one, in this room or anywhere else, should have to trade their dignity for the appearance of a happy family." The applause began at table 12, with Margaret, steady and certain. It rippled outward through the ballroom, not thunderous, not jubilant, but deliberate. The sound of 220 people offering something rarer than praise, respect. My father took my arm as we came down the stage steps. His grip was firm, his eyes were clear, and for the first time in 15 years, the two of us walked out of a room together. The drive back to the island took a little under half an hour. My father did not speak for most of it. Then, somewhere on the bridge over the black, endless marsh, he said, "I will file for divorce on Monday." I did not argue. I did not comfort him. I simply reached over and squeezed his hand. When we pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. Camille's things were still there. The garment bags, the monogrammed towels, the pillows she had chosen for my living room. But she was not. She had taken a car from the hotel to somewhere I did not know and did not care to learn. My father's phone buzzed 14 times between 11 that night and 2 in the morning. He showed me the messages the next day. "Warren, please, I can explain. Then, do not do this to our family. Then, this is all Nora's doing. She has manipulated you." And the last one, at 1:45 in the morning. "You will regret this." Delaney called me at 11:30 that night, crying the ugly, raw kind of crying that strips away every performance. "Why did you do this?" she said. "She is my mother." "I know she is," I said, "and I am sorry you are in pain." "But she stole more than $2 million from my father. She forged his name. She was planning to take my house next. I did not have another option, Delaney." The line went quiet for a long time. Then very softly she said, "I know." After we hung up, I sat on the porch in the dark. The ocean was louder at night, or perhaps I was finally quiet enough to hear it. I did not feel victorious. I felt hollow, the way you feel when someone finally removes a thing that has been growing inside you for years. It hurts, but you are lighter. My father came out and sat in the chair beside me and placed my mother's letter on the armrest between us. "Keep it," he said. "It was always yours." Camille's final message, "You will regret this," was not an empty threat. It was a press release. By 9 the next morning, a local tabloid site ran a headline that made my stomach clench. "Local philanthropist says stepdaughter staged public humiliation at charity gala." The article was built almost entirely on Camille's own interview. The tears, the trembling voice, the full performance. She called me troubled. She called the reveal a vindictive ambush by a jealous stepdaughter who had never accepted her. She said my father was confused and easily led. The comments split immediately, and a disturbing number of people believed her. "That poor woman was blindsided," one wrote. "No family business should be aired in public. Nora Whitlock should be ashamed." I sat at the kitchen counter reading those words, and I felt the old ache rise up from somewhere deep. The people-pleasing instinct that had run my life for so long, whispering that maybe I had gone too far, that maybe I should have handled it quietly, that maybe I owed someone an apology. I have to be honest with you. In that moment, after everything, I still had to fight the reflex to make myself smaller so that the woman who had robbed my father could feel comfortable again. I called Elliot. He did not let me finish the sentence. "Do not respond," he said. "Do not post anything. Do not call anyone. Coralie's article goes live tonight. The facts will do the work." 2 hostile emails arrived that afternoon, both from women in Camille's social circle. both of whom had sat at my table and drunk my wine on my porch. "You should be ashamed of yourself," one wrote. "Camille has given more to this community than you ever will." The other simply said, "Karma is real, Nora." I thought about that word, karma. I thought about Camille forging my father's name, draining his retirement, hiding my mother's last letter in a locked drawer for 19 years, and still, somehow, convincing half the internet to feel sorry for her. And then, at 6 that evening, my phone lit up with a notification from the Savannah Society Register. Coralie had kept her word. Her article was more than 3,000 words of surgical journalism. No speculation, no adjectives. Only evidence stacked like bricks. She published the forged deed beside Dr. Voss's analysis. She printed the bank records with the routing numbers redacted, but the amounts and account names intact. She quoted Judge Pruitt on the record. She laid out a full timeline, from the registration of the shell company, through the retirement withdrawals and the fraudulent credit card, and then she set the old divorce decree beside all of it, like a mirror. The headline alone was enough. "The Philanthropist Who Stole: Inside the Double Life of Camille Rousseau." Within 12 hours, the piece had been read more than 100,000 times. The same tabloid that had run Camille's teary interview that morning published a retraction by midnight, apologizing for its earlier one-sided reporting and directing readers to the verified evidence in the register. The Coastal Georgia Bar Association released a formal statement the following morning. The award had been permanently rescinded. The foundation's partnership status was suspended pending a comprehensive audit. Within 2 days, 3 of the foundation's largest corporate sponsors withdrew their pledges, a combined loss of $460,000. Camille's publicist released a 2-sentence statement on her behalf. No one quoted it. The story had already moved on, but not in the direction she had hoped. On Monday morning, my father walked into the county family court in a navy suit, with the expression of a man who had just woken from a very long sleep. He filed for divorce on the grounds of fraud upon the marriage and the dissipation of marital assets. The petition ran 14 pages, prepared by Elliot over the preceding 2 weeks, and it cited every document, every account, and every forged signature we had uncovered. That same afternoon, Elliot filed a formal criminal complaint with the sheriff's office. The charges were precise: forgery in the first degree, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, identity fraud for the unauthorized credit card, each one a felony. Each one carrying potential prison time measured in years, not months. The sheriff's office opened an investigation immediately, and Camille was instructed to present herself within 3 days. By Wednesday, she had hired a well-known criminal defense attorney named Bennett Shaw. His first move was a phone call to Elliot proposing a settlement. Return the money, close the accounts, drop the charges, and everyone walks away quietly. Elliot relayed the offer. I did not need 30 seconds. No settlement, I said. My father is entitled to the full protection of the law, not a handshake in a conference room. By the end of that week, the bank had frozen both of Camille's accounts, a combined $650,000, locked until the investigation concluded. Delaney called me that Thursday, her second call since the gala. Her voice was calmer this time, quieter. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Not as enemies. I never thought of you as my enemy, Delaney," I said. "But you have to decide where you stand. I cannot do that for you." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I know." And I began to hope, just a little, that she meant it. The final number arrived a few weeks later. The association's emergency audit of the foundation uncovered what Elliot had suspected from the start. The rot went deeper than the personal accounts. $95,000 in charitable donations had been quietly reclassified and redirected toward Camille's personal expenses. Event planning invoices that turned out to be catering for her private dinner parties. Administrative costs that matched, to the dollar, her monthly spa membership. And a $12,000 consulting fee paid to Rousseau Legacy Holdings, the very same shell company she had used to steal my father's house. The revised total climbed to roughly $2.2 million. That same week, the county grand jury returned a formal indictment. 4 felony counts: forgery in the first degree, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, identity fraud, and the misappropriation of charitable funds. Camille surrendered herself at the courthouse, posted $80,000 in bail, and was released with an ankle monitor and a court order prohibiting any contact with my father. The restraining order was granted the same afternoon. 200 feet, no exceptions. Her defense attorney floated the idea of a countersuit, defamation, against me. Elliot's response was a single sentence in an email. Every statement made at the gala was supported by independently verified evidence, reviewed in advance by a sitting judge, and we welcome the discovery process. The countersuit was never filed. In the first week of July, after the indictment and the restraining order and the headlines had all settled into a kind of exhausted stillness, I sat down with my father on the porch of the beach house. The same porch, the same chairs, nothing else the same. "Dad," I said, "I love you. I need you to hear that first, because what I am about to say might not sound like love, but it is." He nodded. He was listening, truly listening, maybe for the first time in years. "I am not going back to being the version of me that made everyone comfortable," I said. "I spent 15 years being the quiet one, the accommodating one, the daughter who never complained because she did not want to cause trouble. That is over. If we are going to have a relationship, a real one, it has to be built on honesty. You tell me the truth, I tell you the truth, and neither of us ever lets anyone else rewrite the story again." His eyes glistened, but he did not look away. "I am going to start seeing someone," he said, "a therapist. I need to understand how I let this happen. How I let a person stand between me and my own daughter for 15 years and never let myself see it. That," I told him, "is all I am asking. Not a grand apology, just the work." Because here is what I had finally learned. Forgiveness is not the same as forgetting, and it is not the same as pretending. I could love my father and still hold a boundary with him. I could let him back into my life without handing him the power to overlook me again. Atonement is not a feeling. It is a set of changed behaviors, repeated over time. And my father, to his credit, began that very week. That evening, I wrote a short, clear email to Delaney. "I do not hate you," I wrote. "I never did. But I need you to understand that what your mother did was criminal, not a misunderstanding, not a family squabble. If you want to build something real between us, it starts with acknowledging that. I am not asking you to choose sides. I am asking you to choose honesty." I also made a phone call I had been postponing for years to a clinical social worker named Dr. Naomi Frost, who specialized in family trauma. My first appointment was the following Tuesday, because it turns out that setting a boundary is not a single dramatic moment on a stage in front of 220 people. It is a series of small, quiet decisions made in ordinary rooms on ordinary days. And the hardest boundary to hold is not the one you set with the person who hurt you. It is the one you set with yourself, in the moment when the old reflex to shrink comes whispering back. The letter arrived in the middle of July. Not an email, not a text, but 3 handwritten pages in a cream-colored envelope. I recognized Delaney's handwriting at once. She still dotted her letters with tiny circles the way she had when she was 14 and I was 19, in the brief window, before her mother made it clear that any closeness between us was unacceptable. "Nora," she wrote, "I have been crying for 3 weeks, not because my mother was arrested, because I finally admitted to myself what I have known for 15 years and refused to say out loud. I watched her treat you like you did not exist. I watched her take your bedroom, your holidays, your place in the family photographs. I watched her call you the leftover at a dinner party, and I laughed along, because laughing was easier than defending you. I was comfortable, and my comfort made me complicit. I am not writing to ask for forgiveness. I have not earned it. I am writing because you deserve to hear someone in this family finally say the words. I saw it. It was wrong, and I did nothing." She wrote that she had started seeing a therapist of her own, that she wanted to become someone who told the truth even when it cost her something. And if I was ever willing, she wrote, she would like to try to actually know me, not as stepsisters who tolerate each other across a holiday table, but as 2 adults who choose honesty over convenience. I read that letter twice. The second time I cried. She had also included something I had not expected, a confession. Camille had told her, years ago, that I had received a large inheritance from my mother and had refused to share it with the family. That was the story. That was why the leftover never came to holidays. "She thinks she is better than us," Camille had said. It was, of course, entirely invented. My mother left no money. She left a letter, and even that had been stolen and locked away for 19 years. I wrote back, "I appreciate your courage, Delaney. Let us start slow." We met at a coffee shop downtown at the end of July, and we talked for 3 hours. It was not comfortable. It was not polished. But it was the most honest conversation I had ever had with anyone who shared my last name. By December, 6 months later, I am sitting on the porch of the island house, in the same spot where this whole story began, with a glass of wine and a phone call at 11:47 at night. The waves sound the same. The salt air tastes the same. But I am not the same woman who sat here in March. My father lives in the guest cottage now, 50 steps from the main house. He finalized his divorce in the fall. The settlement restored every dollar that could still be recovered. He sees his therapist every Thursday. His cardiologist says his numbers are the best they have been in 3 years. Last Tuesday, he cooked dinner for the two of us, the first time he had cooked since my mother was alive. It was genuinely terrible. I ate every bite. I went back to work, but not to my old firm. I founded my own practice, Whitlock Advisory Partners, out of a small office near the river. One of my very first clients was Harrison Cole's firm, the man who shook my hand at the Gala. My first quarter exceeded every projection I had set. Camille's trial is scheduled for the spring. 4 felony counts. If she is convicted, she faces between 5 and 15 years. I do not think about it as often as I once did. Delaney visits the island about once a month now. We are not close, not yet. But we are honest with each other, and I have learned that honesty is worth more than closeness that is built on a lie. Coralie's follow-up article, the one about a woman who chose truth over silence, was picked up by a national outlet in the fall. I did not read it for 2 weeks. When I finally did, I read it sitting beside my mother's letter. The last line my mother ever wrote to me was this: "You are enough. You always were." Every morning now, I open that letter. Every morning, I sit on this porch and watch the Atlantic stretch out toward a horizon my mother always wanted to see and never did. And every morning, I know something I did not know a year ago. For 15 years, my stepmother had a word for the things she took from me. She called it practical. Taking my room was practical. Erasing me from the photographs was practical. Cutting me out, dollar by dollar and dinner by dinner, was always only practical. And for 15 years, I let that one small word make me small. But here is the truth I finally understand. Sitting in the house I bought with my own quiet years, with my father 50 steps away and my mother's handwriting in my hands. Being practical was never the same thing as being right, and being quiet was never the same thing as being good. I am here because I chose to be, not because anyone permitted it, not because I earned the right through my silence. I am here because I am enough. I always was. This was never a story about revenge. It was a story about the moment you finally stop shrinking so that someone else can feel tall. So if you are somewhere in your own life right now, making yourself smaller, at home, at work, anywhere at all, I hope you heard something tonight that reminds you your boundaries are not selfishness. They are survival. Stay with me, and I will keep telling you the truth. Thank you for listening.